right. Well, thanks everyone for coming out today and spending your Saturday with us. So as JJ mentioned, I came aboard to the LPNC on the executive committee as a member at large, and then pretty quickly as we started to discuss what was needed, how we go and how we approach donors, how we expand our party, it became pretty evident that we needed a very kind of focused strategic plan in order to make sure we were all on the same page, we're all rowing the same direction, and also to present to those folks so that they understand that we have a vision and we have the capability and we have the plan to move forward. So what we did is we kind of pulled together people from all over the party. We had people on the policy side, we had people on the administration side, we had people on fundraising side. We kind of all came together through a series of meetings and kind of hashed out what we need to concentrate on. And one thing I was very focused on is how much time, how much effort, how much resources do we need to put towards each of these so that we remain balanced and we remain on focus on plan. Look at that. Clicker works. So I first wanted to kind of set the context here. When we look at why we're doing what we're doing, why we're spending our day here Saturday. I asked a bunch of libertarians, why are you a libertarian? And the number one answer was, so that I can argue with people I already agree with. But the number two answer, close second, was because North Carolina deserves state and local governments that are responsive and responsible to the people of North Carolina. I mean, it might be a fairly new idea that that government should serve the people rather than people serving the government, but it's an important idea for liberty. We all obviously agree with that, and that's why we're here. So with that context, we first wanted to establish a vision for what the party needs to do. Now our vision is kind of our description of what the world is going to look like when we succeed. When we, at the end of the day, at the end of 5 years, or as a continuing process, the end of 15, 20 years, at the end of our lives, we can say, this is the world that we helped create. So our vision is a free, peaceful, and prosperous North Carolina, where every individual can pursue their unique vision of a rewarding and enriching life. That is something I think that is worth fighting for. That's something that's worth us spending our Saturday here for. Thanks. And that's a big idea, and I think it's a powerful idea, and that's why you'll see it through the whole convention on both sides of the front here. A lot of times we talk about smaller government, or we talk about more liberty or more freedom. But really what we're trying to get to is the state where we can all live our lives the way we choose as independent, free people. So if that's our vision, we want people within North Carolina, or really all over the world, to get on board with that vision. I mean, that's not something that just the Libertarian Party has. So we've got a lot of folks from the ACLU, from Stop Torture, that are coming and going to talk to us today. And I think they share our vision. And I think that's great because we all find our way to help fulfill that vision. So the question is, our mission, what is the LPNC's way to fulfill that vision? So what we want to do is we want to leverage our political influence at the state and local levels to promote candidates and policy consistent with our platform. At the end of the day, we're a political party. JJ outlined all the costs that it's going to take to get people in positions where we can influence policy. So while it's very important that the ACLU looks at the judicial front and that the Stop Torture people look specifically at their issue, and the Green Party takes on their issues, our mission, what we focus on, what we're good at, is making sure that North Carolina gets the policies that help to fulfill our vision. So the next stage of that development is, so what's our strategy to achieve that mission? We came down to 4 distinct areas that we want to concentrate on. And these are weighted, so the size of the circle is roughly the size of the importance of each of these areas. The first one is fundraising. I think you'll probably hear that theme more than just from JJ and I this weekend, but it's really important that we have strong fundraising capabilities in order to fund all of the things that we need to do. It would be great if, this was 200 years ago and we could go, and just kind of speak at the town square and get our ideas across in some marketplace of ideas. Today, with 330 million people, with 9 million people in North Carolina, we need money to make sure our ideas can reach the most people that they can. And just to be clear, I don't want to go back to 200 years ago. Libertarianism as an idea is about the future. It's about moving forward. It's about creating a better world for tomorrow. It's not about looking back. So just want to make sure I clarified that. Second, of course, policy influence. And you'll notice this is kind of what a campaign might look like as well, and which is kind of appropriate. The Libertarian Party is really a campaign that lasts more than 18 months. It lasts decades. So this might look a little like a campaign, but actually being able to influence policy. The third is constituency development. So that is reaching out to people all across North Carolina, how we reach out, things like Brian Irvin's doing with the communications plan. And then finally, of course, administration. Although administration is kind of a dirty word, you need to have it. You need to have operational excellence in order to keep your organization focused and moving forward. So what I want to do is look at each one of those. The first one, look at fundraising. And as JJ mentioned, we've got ideas of addressing small donors. We've got ideas about addressing large donors. And then, of course, we'll take money from anywhere. So membership support is the most important aspect of our fundraising abilities. And so those are the $5 donations. Those are the $10 a month donations. As JJ said, if we can get enough of those going, the predictability and the sustainability of our revenue is something that's really important. Not having that predictability doesn't allow us to make good strategic decisions about, for example, can we hire a full-time executive director? And that's something that's definitely needed, and that's something we want to do. But unless, if we're relying on kind of those single big donations once in a while, you can't really plan like that. So a $5 a month donation is just as important as someone who decides to roll in and give $10,000 one time. Of course, we'll take that $10,000 if they want to give one time, so those major donors are certainly important. We've got a plan. JJ and Brad have been working on getting this information out to them and going around the state, as JJ mentioned, to talk to these folks. That's great seed capital. If we can convince one person to drop a sizable check, then that could accelerate a lot of our other plans. And then, of course, we've got our kind of outer circle people who might not quite kind of fit into our membership or a major donor, but still want to help us out a little bit. Again, we don't turn down money very often. We have it, but and then we get to the kind of meat of it, the policy influence. And of course, that's our mission. That's what we want to do, is influence policy. We need to fundraise in order to do this. Fundraising is step one. If we don't get the fundraising down, then we're gonna have a really uphill battle with influencing policy. Policy influence kind of breaks down into four separate areas. The first, of course, campaign support. JJ's State of the Party kind of addressed a lot of those campaign support issues. What we want to do is we'll find candidates, groom those candidates, help those candidates get on a path. They're going to raise their own money, but we need some resources to help support them, especially in the early stages. So that's a really important expense that we have. Ballot access and election reform kind of go hand in hand. I know that traditionally or historically, we are very sensitive about ballot access issues because we need to make that 2%. Fortunately, we've had some amazing candidates who have helped us achieve that over the years. So again, a hat tip to our most recent gubernatorial candidate there. But in the long term, we of course want to reform that so that we're not always worried about those things. And then finally, a small part of this is pushing our legislative agenda. Again, our vision is a free, peaceful, and prosperous North Carolina. And if we can align ourselves with some folks in other parties that want to help us move that agenda forward, then we're not going to turn down that help just because they have a different letter after their name. So looking forward, so what does that policy strategy kind of look like? And I thought we'd take a little bit of time to discuss that here, just so you guys can understand the work that's continuing on this strategy. If you don't recognize this is the state of North Carolina with all of the counties. One of our volunteers, Jason Melahani, put together a really great analysis where he looked at a number of different factors from districts across the state. The number of libertarians, the total population, historic election turnout, who's currently in those seats, and he came up with basically some targeted districts where we think that our efforts could achieve more than, for instance, trying to attack Wake County or a large kind of stronghold for another party. And so we've got these, and those numbers are the district numbers. So there's a handful of good districts that we can look at. Now, there's our strategy moving forward and what we want to target, but there's also opportunities that come along. And so we certainly wouldn't turn down a candidate who wanted to run in the northeast part of the state. But if we're going to focus our efforts, if we're going to create a strategic plan, then this is what we want to look at. So if I overlay on that a map of where we have county affiliates, it doesn't quite line up. So what we've been doing over the past, what we've been doing for a long time but have ramped up recently, is looking at developing some additional county affiliates closer to these areas where we feel we have the best opportunity, which that makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you do that? So now we're developing more county affiliates. County affiliates really are our ground game in those areas, and that's going to be important once we get to recruiting and grooming candidates in those districts. So with that, I'd like to transition to that constituency development. Constituency development, the largest part is outbound communications. And that's what we do to reach 9 million people in North Carolina. Those are the things that Brian Irving is doing. Those are the interviews that Nicholas and JJ had on TWC 14 the other day. All of those things help us to reach more people with our ideas, with our message, and with our vision. The second, of course, is volunteer development. We want to get some individual people involved in these areas, and we want to maintain a nice pool of volunteers so that when we do have a candidate, that candidate can pull from a group of people that are excited about the message, excited about the program, and they can hit the ground running more quickly. And of course, the third is affiliate development, which we talked about, and having a persistent structure in those counties so that when that candidate does become available, we're ready to go. So then, of course, the last area I want to talk about is administration. And there are two areas that, again, administration is not that kind of sexy part of it. I mean, the policy stuff is certainly a sexy part. The fundraising stuff is the stuff you have to do everything else. So why do you do administration? Two areas we want to focus on. The first one being reporting and accountability. That's something that I feel is really important. I run a small business. I know that you run a business by the numbers. And if we can have a clear reporting, clear accountability for our data, for our finances, for all of our numbers, then we can manage this party even better than what we're managing it today. And the second is collaboration and communication. I mean, there are 23,000 libertarians in North Carolina. There's 60 of us here in this room. So how do we talk to those other folks? Brad has done a great job of getting things, like for instance, yesterday he had a Google Hangout with all of the county affiliates who couldn't be here, or the officers of the county affiliates that couldn't be here today. So we're looking for new ways to kind of leverage technology to make it more efficient, allow more people to get involved. So if you're in the western part of the state and you want to be on the executive committee, for example, you don't have to travel to Greensboro every 6 weeks for our executive committee meeting. We've now got the executive committee meetings, our Google Hangouts, and open to everyone online, so you can participate from the comfort of your living room. So again, this is our big picture. This is what keeps us focused, and this is what keeps us moving forward. This was developed not in a vacuum. It was developed with the help of a lot of members of the executive committee, a lot of members of the party. It was presented to the executive committee. The executive committee did vote to adopt it, and we've been continuing to refine it. We've also started to put numbers and targets on each of those areas. And so we've got some 2015 targets that we'll be measuring against to see where we're succeeding, where we could do better, and where we might need to adjust the strategic plan. And this is, as JJ mentioned, some other things, this is a living document. This will change based on the opportunities we see and as we grow, the sophistication of how we understand what we need to do. So again, we've got a plan. We've all got the passion for these ideas, and I think there's a potential in the market. These ideas are more and more accepted. More and more people are starting to believe that government can't solve all the problems, More and more people are listening to libertarians, and so this is our opportunity. I mean, they've called this the libertarian moment, and I think that's true. But of course, we're not missing one thing. We're all here for one reason. It's because it's going to take all of us to do this. All of us and more, actually. Because this is about people. Our vision is about people. It's not about politics. We're not in here for power. We're not in here to play the game. We're not in here to be an extra on game of House of Cards. We're here because we think we can build a better North Carolina for everybody. We think our ideas can help even the most marginalized person out of 9 million people in North Carolina live their life the way they see fit. And I think that's something that is worth fighting for. It's something to be proud that we're fighting for. So I normally like to kind of end with how can you help? Obviously, donate, volunteer, and vote are the 3 ways that you can help. I'm assuming that everyone here is already doing that. And if you're not, then just figure out a way to get that done. But if you're already doing that, there is something you can do. Find 10 people over the next year. That's one person. That's less than one person a month. And help bring them over to understanding how powerful these ideas can be. Help them get excited about these ideas. I mean, if there are 60 people at our convention this year, imagine next year if we all went out and got 10 people. Next year we'll have 660 people at our convention. And think about the difference that could make, not just to the room, but to North Carolina in general. So again, I want to thank you guys for coming out here. I think time is our certainly most precious resource. It's very scarce, and the fact that you guys would come out here and spend a Saturday to work on these ideas to help spread liberty throughout North Carolina is commendable. So I want to thank you for that. I'll be happy to take questions if we've got time.
Give the website so they can go make donations.
If you want to learn more about the strategic plan, you can go to lpnc.org/2020. If you go,
are sustaining donors, so donate regularly.
So again, that $5 a month is I said just as important. If you can donate your time, that's also great as well. Yeah, Phil.
Phil Jacobson, Wake County. You mentioned earlier on the idea that large donors might be asked to target their donations. Is there any notion in the works to make that possible for all donors?
That is a great question. Brad, I'm going to put you on the spot. Brad deals a lot with our donors and technology and the Nation Builder platform, which allows us to take online donations and publish our website and things like that. And so, Brad, do you have an answer to that question, or can we say?
We are looking at that, as a matter of fact, and there are a number of different approaches that we're evaluating. We haven't decided on anything specific yet, but I mean, for example, one of the things we talked about was legislative influence, and maybe we'd set up an option for somebody to fund a part-time lobbyist probably too early to do that right now, but that would be an example of the kind of thing we're talking about. Is that kind of exactly?
But that's a great idea.
I think you forgot to thank some people who are helping us, namely a large part of the police force and all of the NSA, helping us persuade with the message that the government considers the people its enemy.
Hear that, NSA? Here we go.
Yes, Barbara.
And just to get the ball rolling,
Yeah.
I had been a monthly donor, but couldn't get it. I'm sorry, I haven't stopped. But we are going to renew our pledge, and I'm going to be one of those first $100 a month pledgers, and I encourage you to do it.
Thank you, Barbara. We have more $100 a month pledgers? Yes, Brett.
Yeah, I have a question about the plan. I'm wondering, you showed the map of what Jason did in terms of picking.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how he picked those particular, what is it about those particular districts that he highlighted that makes them attractive?
That is, let me see if I can get back to that. All right. So, is that a softball question? Do you know the answer and you just want me to kind of explain this to the group?
You want me to address it?
Yeah, well, if you could. I mean, Brad is an amazing individual when it comes to data and spreadsheets. I'm on the communication side. I work with Brian on that, so I'll let you explain exactly what those data points were.
Okay, well, basically what Jason was looking for were districts where historically only one party was running a candidate, but the balance of registrations between the two legacy parties was relatively even, meaning that if someone ran on the Libertarian line, there would be the potential for appealing to quite a few folks who might otherwise feel disenfranchised because their particular party wasn't running someone. So we have Libertarians plus the unaffiliated plus the either the Democrats or Republicans. So conceptually, the darker ones are ones where all of these are unopposed. That's to say, quote unquote unopposed. That is to say, only one of the major parties is running a candidate. But the darker ones are ones where the balance was closer.
I'm sorry, I would add that when Jason did that, he was looking at gerrymandered districts, and what's plain for us is irony. The Republicans have gerrymandered against the Democrats, and the Democrats have gerrymandered against the Republicans, and they're trying to protect themselves from each other, and that may well be what's opening the door of opportunity for us, is their crooked gerrymandering.
So we can thank gerrymandering in addition to the NSA and the militarized police. Brian, Lewis.
Yeah, when we look at our own districts as the delegates, we're coming from a county level in where we're at. For instance, Johnson County is up there on the list, and we've actually had, at Wake County, we've had folks from Johnson come up and visit us and express interest. In terms of getting folks in those target counties who have reached out to the party, getting that information in the hands of the counties so that perhaps, let's say from Wake, we can say, hey, we're going to do a meeting down there to help our brothers in Johnson County with our organization that we have in Wake, and say, hey, maybe we can have them host us a meeting once a month. We'll come down and help them get together. What sort of tool is there to reach down to the county affiliates when that information gets to the hands and following the state's plan?
Yes. So, so the question is, how do we continue to develop county affiliates in these areas where we've targeted? I believe we're currently searching for a director of affiliate development. Is that correct? Brad has been, as executive director, kind of fulfilling that role and doing a great job working on developing affiliates. So Johnson County, I'm not sure. Do we have a development in Johnson County?
There's a person.
So we have a person identified that is interested, and I think that helping to communicate this plan, obviously that prompted your question here, and so continuing to communicate this strategy to our affiliates is going to be something that's important for them to find ways to help out. So yeah, Wake County can meet somewhere on the border of Johnson and Wake County, and Johnson can bring the moonshine, and Wake County can bring strawberries. I don't know, then...
Exchange of ideas.
That's right. Brett.
Yeah, we do actually have a development plan. Last year, at the beginning of 2014, we had 17 of the 100 counties in North Carolina with affiliates. By the end of last year, we had bumped that up to 21. We're targeting additional counties this year. Basically, the way that it's been working is we look for folks that are interested. That is to say, volunteers who've expressed an interest in organizing in a particular area. And ideally, we try to match those up with the ones we're interested in. But like Ken said, if someone's interested in, one of the counties like New Bern, I'm not New Bern in Connecticut, where New Bern is, we'll take anybody we can get. And then we try to get a bunch of them together, ideally, maybe even more than one county, and then we'll have a training session to walk them through what they need to do to get going. Supplementing that with having someone from another county, and we've done that on an informal basis. The guys from Davidson, for example, were very helpful in getting the group last year in Forsyth, and Stokes, and Rutherford going. So we haven't done that formally, but that's a good idea. We could probably add that in and try to make sure that there's a role for folks in adjoining counties to help in that process. But we do have a formal program where we go in and train these guys.
So you said that last year we went from 14 to 21
Sorry,
counties.
17 to 21.
17 to 21 counties. You might have said 17.
I don't know if Ken, you mentioned this during the presentation, but half of North Carolina counties, unaffiliated voters are the second largest registered group.
And it looks like
Includes Wake, Durham, and Arden.
within the next few years, statewide, unaffiliated voters will overtake Republicans.
They're overtaking Republicans, which is probably why the Republicans are frantically trying to change ballot access laws.
I thought of one other thing I should mention, which is we have 21 counties organized, but because most of those are the larger counties, or I should say most of the larger counties are among those 21, in terms of the registered libertarians, we cover about 63% of all registered libertarians are in a county that's currently organized. So we've kind of got the low-hanging fruit. That isn't to say we don't have a lot of good targets to go for, but we do, where it's better than it sounds, I guess.
And then one more quick comment, I'll get to Ray's question. Sean Haw polled at 9% with unaffiliated voters. Am I correct in saying that?
Voters who identify themselves as independent.
With voters who identify themselves as independent, Sean Haw is polling at 9%. He's also polled at 9% for very young voters, 18 to 24. And so we look at those numbers, and 9% is, for us, is amazing. So there's some opportunity there. Right?
Just some points of information. I'm an unofficial statistician as a hobbyist. I don't ask for or take donations for this, but I just wanted to share a few similar numbers. He got 8.4% in Graham County. That was his best last year. The total number of registered voters is about 6.3 million. The Libertarian share, since we were reaffiliated in mid-2008, has increased every month except one, which was 2012 June. Our current share is 0.41% of the statewide electorate. One notable thing I thought was for Sean was for all 6 candidates for U.S. Senate, including the 3 recognized write-ins, I found their average, and then I counted the number of counties in which they exceeded their own average. And for the 3 write-in candidates, it was all 20 or fewer, meaning their power was very concentrated around where they lived and their friends and family. For Kay Hagan, it was somewhere in the 40s, 40 counties in which he exceeded her average, which was still relatively localized. Tom Tillis was exceeding his own average in 60 counties, indicating to me a broader base of support than Kay Hagan, and he also won the election. Sean Haw had the most. He had 61 counties in which he exceeded his own average, which I took to be a good measure of our general appeal. The Demopublican share of the electorate, which was 95% in 1989, is down to 72% currently. And the DR difference, or closeness, which was at a record low in 2007 at around 10%, increased significantly with the Obama phenomenon and a sharp rise in, relative rise in Democratic voters, and is now back down to 11% spread between the D's and R's. So the lower that number goes, the more competitive we are statewide.
Wrap it up. Okay. Oh. All right. Yeah, Shane.
Yeah, real quickly to back up what Ray just said, I noticed in the exit polls that most of Kay Hagan's votes came from people who were kind of voting it out as a referendum to support Obama. Most of Tillis's votes came from people who were kind of voting against Obama's agenda. And Sean Haw's votes came primarily from people for whom Barack Obama was not a factor. So not in nominal terms, but in terms of the percentage of the vote, Sean Haw was much more likely to get votes for people who weren't trying to make a statement about Barack Obama, but just trying to select the best candidate.
So you're saying the election was Barack Obama versus Sean Haw?
Basically. Well, it was Barack Obama versus not Barack Obama versus Sean Haw.
Okay. Great. Great. JJ.
I would point out, going back to the district analysis.
Yeah.
That Bjorn Pedersen also did an analysis of local municipal elections, particularly in smaller municipalities where people are winning by 10 and 20 votes, and looking at how many libertarians are in those areas. And we do have a list of 10 or 15 municipalities where we think we could possibly win seats in addition to the House districts.
And that's an important point because it's very unlikely that someone's going to walk into a North Carolina House or Senate seat. But if we can get people elected, even if they're in nonpartisan positions in local elections, then they start to gain a little more name recognition. They've got a little experience. Even though we consider experience in government to be a negative thing, I think the electorate at large kind of might look at that. And then, you know, they can kind of work their way up from those locals into being much more powerful statewide. Great. Brian.
Just one more point, and this is sort of to the committee at large. I've discussed it in several points. Sometimes I want to beat this drum a little bit harder to get that point across as we discuss, you know, getting our ideas in at those local levels and at those committee levels, at those community development committee levels. That there is that challenge, and I know that in terms of how we get involved and how you sit at that table and say, I'm for the no action option, and get invited back. and that's a challenge that I'm struggling with myself. Now, being at a past time, in a past life affiliated with other parties, or at times when I've become elected, that you get grabbed and said, okay, well, we have an initiation meeting for you. We have a here's how the system works meeting for you. So they're real quick to grab people into a freshman indoctrination. Here's how you're going to make the plan bigger. Here's how you're going to add. Have we considered looking at how we can represent and sort of share what we do know with folks to say, when you're in these committees, yeah, avoid this language and go for this language, and here's how you can really be a good supporter of the no action option, right. And not get pushed away from the table.
We've talked a lot about candidate training and about providing folks with resources that can help them through the campaign as far as more of a media training or grooming while they're in office. We haven't talked as much about that. Those programs, putting together those programs, they take money. And so that's why it comes back down to our very first point, which is fundraising is the key to everything else that we can do.
And one thing is, I think it's happened over the last 10 years for training, is the different states are all doing different stuff, and they're sharing best practices. But we're not there yet, but I think we're making a lot of headway towards having training systems that are not as expensive as flying in consultants and renting hotel rooms.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks, Kim.